Today I'm going to talk about the 25 most common customer success manager interview questions and give you the answers so you can crush your next interview. Let's jump right in. So how would you define customer success? So customer success is essentially like having a personal trainer for a product or a service. I'm here to proactively diagnose problems before they happen, guide you towards those goals, and be your dedicated champion when things go off the rails or I need to bring you back onto the train tracks. Also, having a proactive partnership, not just reactivity, but proactivity, understanding right from the start what it is that you need for your business to be successful by leveraging our tool or our platform. What experience do you have in managing customer relationships? So for me, as a CSM, I used to actually manage 100 mid-market clients for a SaaS company. And what I actually had to do from a whole was segmentation. So categorize these accounts by AR, growth, usage patterns, which actually helped me understand who needed high touch monthly calls versus automation, or who needed webinars and resources. Then I'd have structured engagement. So VIP accounts, I would do on-site QBRs. For smaller accounts, I would do group training sessions or even office hours on the week. And then listening and relationship building, like taking the time to understand who your customer is, what their pains are, what their specific use case is, goes a super long way to understand them. As well, what that brought for churn. So we're dropping churn 25%, NPS scores climbing, and having deeper bonds with these customers to trust you and ultimately renew. So can you describe yourself or your approach? Can you describe your approach to building strong customer relationships? So I actually once walked into a client and they said, "We've been burned. Show us how you're different." And so they've had experiences where account managers or CSMs essentially vanished after the contract was signed. So I had to earn their trust and not just claim to be reliable, but actually demonstrate it through every single interaction. So discovering empathy, right? Understanding their genuine business pain points, even personal motivations. Were they trying to impress their boss? Were they trying to hit a certain financial goal? Were they trying to go for a promotion? And then co-creation of success metrics. Something I always like to ask is, in 6 months, how will you determine that this has been an effective use of your time, resource, and investment? Then you're going to have touch points, weekly calls, bi-weekly calls, monthly calls, sometimes it's quarterly calls. That all depends on the customer and the type of service that you're providing. And then celebrations and transparency. Like if they hit a big milestone, celebrate it. Hey, I saw you guys just did this. Congratulations. Or transparency. Hey, you know what? We're having an incident right now. Just want to keep you in the loop. Like by you actually depicting what they are wanting to see and being their trusted advisor, they're going to have a lot more confidence in you. And because you're trusting every step, because they're going to be trusting you every step of the process, they're going to be able to show up a lot more. So how do you measure customer success? So data can obviously be crucial, but it is daunting. So it's easy to go through dashboards and not really looking at real insights. And so for me, I always look for search, usage and adoption metrics. So logins, utilization rate, time spent on platform, that can actually understand how they're doing things. And then you have health scoring. So product usage, open support tickets, NPS, CSAT, all combined into a health score that can be color coded. But there is also the qualitative component to this, right? So you might have ROI and business outcomes. Like if a company wants to go from A to B, you have to showcase, hey, we've made 8% movement towards that extra outcome. Or if a business outcome has to be, hey, we're trying to become profitable, well, sometimes you actually have to understand from their insights, from their information, how are they trending in that direction? And then customer sentiment. NPS and CSAT, sure, that's fine. But you can also ask your customer directly, like, hey, how are you feeling about this partnership and relationship right now? Is there anything you'd like us to change? Is there any improvement like you'd like to see? By correlating the actual outcomes plus data, you're going to have a really good sense of what the customer is looking for and how they are measuring you on a day-to-day basis. Can you share an example of a challenging customer situation you successfully resolved? So I'll never forget Meltdown Monday. I opened my account to a major enterprise client, and it was all caps and said, "We're canceling. This is a disaster." So there was a gap that was critical to their CFO, and I had to obviously calm that fire, figure out the root cause, and salvage that relationship. So immediate response, I jumped on a call with them within the hour. Obviously, no time for coffee. You got to actually solve the issue right then and there. And then deep listening. People always talk about like active listening, and I think that's kind of like a buzzword. You have to sit there and understand with empathy what is their problem and understand that this is a huge deal to them. So it might be a disaster to them, and you have to think as a CSM, how can I understand their concerns? What is the business impact? Who is this affecting? And what are the consequences of this incident? And then I did a solution sprint. So I actually involved my data team right away. We built a customized dashboard that mapped their cost savings and revenue metrics. And then we scheduled weekly updates for the transparency of the rollout, keeping them informed of our progress. and then follow through. So over the next 2 weeks, I made sure every glitch was addressed, sending daily progression emails, and ultimately solving their pain points. So not only redacted their cancellation threat, but they also thanked us for jumping on the call with urgency, showcasing transparency, keeping them up to date, and building their own dashboard for them. So by going the extra mile, by being open and honest, and having that transparency, that line of communication, that's how I was able to turn around this customer. How do you handle difficult or demanding customers? So I once had the email again from the CFO, 2 a.m., demanding that they had to have immediate reports, and they were known as the meltdown guy. And people actually dreaded his messages. So I took it upon myself to show that we could have a healthier dynamic. And I want him to feel heard, but I also had to depict that, hey, I'm not going to be on call 24/7. That's just not realistic. So empathy and acknowledgement first. Hey, I understand this is a problem. And then I asked them, what keeps you up at night? And then I understand their response. And then you have a cadence. Cool. I understand that this is really critical for you. You want to know the details inside and out. We set up a weekly call, reviewed any of the data that needed, and then we had a 24-hour turnaround time. Because a lot of times what people will turn into is waiters and waitresses, where somebody asks you a question and you want to get off right away. But you can actually be too accessible and too serviceable. So you actually have to tone that down and set those boundaries, or else you're always just going to be expected to respond, within minutes. As well, what I would do is proactively, I would send the actual report ahead of time, so they didn't have to wait for that Monday morning. I'd send them off on a Sunday. Here's the report. Let me know if you have any questions. So that way, they were sleeping better at night. I was not getting any urgent messages, and we fell into this cadence where a report would be sent every Monday or Sunday night, and then they would get it. So that's how you can turn things around, by having that open conversation, being proactive, and setting that cadence for communication. What strategies do you use to prevent customer churn? So at a previous startup, churn was really high at 5%. So it was really like a leaky bucket, and we would get a lot of customers and then we'd lose them. So we had to plug this. So early warning systems, so we developed a health score that flagged usage tips. There's a lot of support tickets or negative sentiment from feedbacks. And then we had regular check-ins. So if you have an at-risk account, you have to schedule those monthly calls or even weekly calls if a meltdown was happening or if things were getting a little bit spicy. And then sometimes you actually have to do an onboarding overhaul. So what I actually noticed was a lot of the onboarding was poor in the customer's experience. So we had a new 30, 60, 90-day plan. So customers would actually see the valuable features, and they would actually be seeing time to value earlier, as opposed to going down the line. It's been 4 months, not seeing any value. They're going to be canceling. And then lastly, the feedback loops. A lot of people think NPS is good or bad. I think it is another tool in a toolkit for the CSM to understand as a pulse check, how are we doing? How are you feeling? And so we were actually able to get churn from 5% down to 2% within half a year, and then actually down to 1% over the course of 12 to 14 months, I think it was. And so when you actually have a lot of churn, you have to go upstream and understand, why are people canceling? What is it that is causing them to churn? Are they not seeing value? Do they feel lost to the product? Do they feel like they've abandoned you? There's all these different compounding factors that can go into churn, and just actually understanding what it is that you're seeing can change all those things. How do you identify cross-sell or upsell opportunities with customers? So my last company, I was a healthcare client, and they were only using 2 modules out of a suite of 5. And essentially, they had a Swiss Army knife, but they were only using the corkscrew and the knife. But we still had the other things to use, right? We had the filing blade, we had the smaller knife, we had little scissors, but they didn't really want to use that. So what I did was I sent them an analysis of what they could be using for them. They actually had some data challenges. So I sent this over. I'm like, hey, this feature set on this tool suite can be super effective. But I didn't want to be a pushy salesperson. I want to be consultative, which I always think about. Do you think that this product will actually help somebody? And if not, do not push it. I do not care what your KPIs are. I do not care what your manager thinks. If a customer will not see any ROI from this product, do not push it on them, because that is what we call commission breath, and everybody can smell that a mile away. So for this customer, data usage, I noticed that they had tasks that could be massively amplified with our advanced features. I let QBR, I showed them the extra modules of what they could do, and then I actually offered them a pilot program for 3 months just to try it, right? Almost a trial period. And it was a huge hit. They loved the product. They wanted to adopt it. They ended up upselling to that. But it's because I showed the value. I wasn't pushy. I was consultative to understand they needed an improved data module. So I showcased what we had, and they went forward. It's all about having the true alignment. And so when I think about upsells and cross-sells, it's having a true alignment of what the customer actually needs, not what your KPIs say. Can you give me an example of a time when you turned a dissatisfied customer into a happy, loyal one? So I had a mid-market client of mine. They said, your product's underperforming. We're going to shop around. And obviously, that's the worst thing that you can see as a CSM. So I actually have to figure out like what is this dissatisfaction? Is it real product gaps? Is it that somebody on their team wants to go to a competitor? Or are they not trained? Like what's actually happening here? So I listened, right? Like you have to be listening. And it actually just revealed to me that they were only using a fraction of the features. They thought that the rest really didn't apply to them. They had no usage of them and they just didn't turn it on. So what then I did was I had a customized workshop for their company and different features showcasing the advanced use cases, how they could use it in different ways that they probably didn't think about. I then actually set up an ongoing support channel, so a Slack channel for their entire team, answering questions in real time. That is a really big ROI and a really big lift for a lot of customers, just to have that back and forth as opposed to sending so many emails per day. And then immediate wins. So I created a win channel that showcased all the adoption from their product, which actually boosted them 15%, showcasing the platform's worth. So they renewed, had a great testimonial, and they unlocked the platform's full potential. And for me, it's like understanding when a customer wants to churn, you really have to dig. Why? Is it product? Is it price? Is it training? Is it buy-in? Is it that they understand how this applies to their business case? So really the digging in is going to be your ultimate goal as a CSM when you're trying to turn around a churning or potentially churning client. So how do you prioritize your customer portfolio? So when I had 100 accounts, I think I actually had upwards of 200 accounts at one time. I quickly realized obviously I could not service all of them. So I had to have a different segmentation of my clientele. So what I did was I segmented by AR and growth potential. So large enterprise deals, they got the most frequent calls. And so all our accounts, they could thrive on group trainings or they could do webinars or office hours that I held. Unless they showed some red flags, then I would jump right in. You also have health score triage. So if an SMB account had a sudden usage drop or an open escalation, I'd bump them up in a priority list. Right? It's all about as a need to know basis. So of course, always going to be your enterprise accounts that you're going to have, first that's priority. And then there's going to be your smaller accounts, but priorities can change. If an SMB account is going to cancel or going to churn, well, then you have to jump on that right away. I also have something called quarterly recalibration, which would be evaluating the different segments because some smaller clients would actually grow into higher tiers, and that would actually adjust how I'd interact with them. So for me, it's like understanding these high accounts, they have to stay engaged, and those high risk accounts also have to be touched upon depending on where they are at that time. So for me, it's like, how much are they worth? When are they renewing? What type of prioritization do they need? Are they a lot more autonomous? Do they need a lot more handholding? So understanding your accounts at a really in-depth level is critical to actually understanding how you can then segment them for your book of business and then how you can actually treat them. How do you stay up to date with trends and best practices in customer success? So for me, I think it's really important to actually understand like the pulse of customer success as a whole, as a changing, ever evolving industry. So for me, I'm really interested in professional communities and newsletters. So I follow Greg Danes, I follow Daphne Lopez, and I'll also check out some Slack channels where I'm seeing some CS professionals drop some knowledge. And then conferences and webinars, like because I'm in the e-commerce space today, I want to understand e-commerce, how it's evolving, how it's changing. So whatever space you're in, whether it's crypto or healthcare and insurance, you should be involved in that. And also peer mentorship, like working with other CSMs to understand what's working, what are they seeing, what's not working. And when you can actually reminisce and understand what is going on in other people, what's their point of view, then you can actually collaborate and scale up as a whole. Can you explain how you manage customer expectations? So I learned early on that unmet and unclear expectations is like a disaster scenario. So you actually have to be transparent, have realistic goals, and true timelines. So kickoff calls, I always clarify, here's what we can deliver, here's what's out of scope, and here's the timeline we're targeting. Be very, very honest. Like a lot of CSM, they want to promise the world, and it just makes customers angry. Like it's better to give people bad news than to overpromise and have and have fake news. So always under-deliver, over-deliver, under-promise, it works wonders. And then we also have milestone mapping. So make a big goal. If a customer wants to hit $1 million in a year, make those small steps. So how can we look for Q1? How can we look for Q2? How can we look for Q3? And then lastly is honest communication. If a feature release is delayed or a KPI falls short, tell them. Say, hey, this product feature that we were slated to create in Q1 has now been pushed to Q3. Just want to let you know, how do you think that we can approach this as a team to rectify the situation? So that way they're not going to be caught off guard. And if something does go awry, there might be an incident, there might be something dropping a ball, you might miss a meeting accidentally. You're not going to actually erode that trust. They're still going to trust you because the entire time as you've been working with them, you've been truthful and you've been honest. What steps do you take to ensure customer onboarding is successful? This is super critical. Onboarding is the first impression. You set the tone for the entire relationship. A bad onboarding is typical of bad experience. A great onboarding is typical of a good experience. So first things first, kickoff, align success metrics, timelines, each stakeholder responsibilities. Which party is responsible for what? Then we're going to have implementation guides, like a step-by-step blueprint, essentially like a treasure map, to understand what exactly are they headed to do, what tasks must they complete in order to get to the next steps. And then training and resources. Like a lot of these platforms, these SaaS tools are very, very complex, and you have a lot of people working on it. Sometimes you have 40, 50 seats or 40 to 50 licenses, and not everybody is necessarily familiar with your product. So you have to have these live training sessions. You might have recorded videos. You might have knowledge-based articles, but like people have different learning styles. It's okay to have a webinar with an entire company every week for a few months, because if you put that effort in at the beginning, well, you're going to have an entire company that's fully trained on your product and your platform, and you can feel confident that they know what to do. Then I think it's really important to have 30, 60, 90-day check-in points. So you can look in early usage data, celebrate quick wins, like if they're configuring a key feature, and you can also adjust if something's off. Or you can actually dive deeper onto an educational gap that people are not understanding or not quite grasping, and you can dive in when it's not too far down the road, 6 months in. Hey, it's only week 6. Let's adjust that. Let's tweak. Let's improve. How do you handle customer feedback, both positive and negative? So feedback is like a combination of Yelp reviews and a personal diary. Customers might either crush you or they might gripe you, but either way, you have to take it in. So listen and document it. So I log every comment through calls, through surveys, through random Slack messages into my own feedback system. Because if the customer says, hey, Noah, I wish you were more ABC, or hey, Noah, I really appreciated your XYZ, that's really understandable and actionable feedback for me to understand what can I do and take that feedback into other calls. And then acknowledge and appreciation. Positive feedback obviously makes you feel good with the team, but negative feedback is really good to take for yourself, but also for the company. So if a customer says, hey, you know what, we think that your product roadmap is over-promising and under-delivering, well, great, I can bring that back to my manager, I can bring that back to my product team, and then we can actually decipher and improve. Action and follow-up. If a feature is lacking, I will escalate it to product once it's resolved. And circling back, hey, remember your suggestion? We took it seriously. We implemented. Like customers love to feel heard, just like every other human being in the world. They want to see, is my voice being heard? Is there a tangible result and outcome? And that will create a sense of loyalty and essentially co-creation with your product evolution and your relationship as a whole. Can you describe a time when you went above and beyond to deliver exceptional customer service? So there was a client, there was a Super Bowl moment essentially. They wanted real-time support on the Super Bowl Sunday. And obviously there's no 9-to-5 constraints, there's no phone trees. So I volunteered to lead a war room approach where they'd be having immediate escalation pathways on Super Bowl Sunday. So we had our engineers, product managers, and a small support team for Super Bowl Sunday for them. We had a dashboard for real-time monitoring, we had usage metrics, we had error logs, and we also had transaction flows minute by minute. As well, because we had all of those people at the ready, if something broke, we jumped on it. If we had to have a real-time fix and be deployed, we could do so. The launch in Super Bowl Sunday went off without a hitch. It was incredible. They ended up renewing for 2 more years. But because I was so prepared on Super Bowl Sunday, I was able to think ahead. Okay, what if this goes wrong? Who would I need to escalate to? That's why I had engineers. That's why I had support. That's why I had logs. That's why I had a dashboard. So being mindful of what are you going into is super critical. And again, the customer feels that you're going above and beyond. They know it's a Sunday. They know you're working with 7 other people on a Sunday. They are aware of this, and that really goes a long way to building that partnership and ultimately securing a renewal. How do you handle customer escalations? So customer escalations can definitely feel unexpected, sometimes urgent, sometimes pretty messy, and you have to obviously handle it really swiftly. Contain the situation. First and foremost, contain the situation. Ensure that the customer feels heard, supported, rather than ignored and frustrated. You never ever want to feel or give off the feeling that somebody is being ignored, because everybody's points are valid. Even though you might not feel as a CSM that it makes sense or they're blowing things out of proportion, their perspective is critical here, right? So don't think of your own point of view. Think of the customer's perspective of what's going wrong. So first things first, immediate triaging. Acknowledge the escalation. Gather the facts. What happened? When? What did it cause? Then you have to assemble the right team. If it's technical, you bring engineers. If it's billing, I loop in finance. If it's support, I'll bring in support. If it's sales, I'll bring in sales, right? Understanding what team you need to go to solve that problem critically as well as swiftly. And then transparent communication, like provide that real-time update. Even if the fix isn't ready, we are aware of it. We are working on it. It'll be ready in 6 hours. And I think escalations are actually a really fine point, or really critical point rather, of trust building events because customers could see that we sprung into action. We took their issue seriously. And if tension's cool, we resolve the issue and the relationship actually emerges stronger. I know it sounds crazy, but think of any big escalation or big incident with the customer. Obviously, it was really spicy and messy during the time, but depending on how you resolved and how you responded, oftentimes I've seen it really turn out positive if you can approach this and solve it rationally. Can you give me an example of a time when you had to manage multiple customers with competing priorities? So I had two enterprise clients. They both demanded urgent customer integrations with ASAP timelines, right? Everything's always ASAP. And they're both super high value. And so you essentially felt like being a parent with twins who were crying at the same time. So you have to juggle resources without making either feel neglected. So clear project plans. Each client got a published timeline with phased deliverables, so nobody's in the dark. We also had dedicated teams for integration tasks. So I assigned specialized squads to minimize the context switching between the two clients. And then I also had frequent syncs. So I had daily stand-ups internally with my team to track the progress and then escalate any blockages. Both projects landed successfully within a week of each other. Neither felt overshadowed, and they praised the transparent communication. So this is often happening at the enterprise level where you have 3 or 4 customers that have 3 or 4 intense requests that all product is working on. You have to be able to manage things. They want timelines, they want visibility, and most importantly, they want communication. How do you communicate value to customers and demonstrate the impact of your product or service? So a QBR often feels like being on a cooking show. You're just giving metrics, a bunch of slides, and transparently they're boring. I wish QBRs were actually, abolished, but that's another video. You have to prove that we're delivering ROI and tangible results, not just fluff. So data dashboards, visual charts showing usage trends, performance improvements, cost savings, time savings. If they can see that they saved 50K over the last quarter, that is hard proof. If you can say, I saved you 6 hours every single week for the past year, that is proof. And then you can also have a narrative storytelling. And you can connect the dots with anecdotes. So do you remember your compliance headache? Here's the workflow that we reduced errors by 30%. As well, I always talk about the feature roadmap. So next quarter, we can integrate your CRM with even better lead tracking because that's going to plant the seeds of continued collaboration. And when that product is ready, remember when I told you about it? Here it is. Go try it out. Let me know your product feedback. When they can realize that you're not just a vendor, but a true ally and partner, helping their bottom line and their operational excellence, that's going to give you a renewal, that's going to give you an expansion, and just a better overall experience day to day as a CSM. Can you share a successful customer expansion or renewal story? So I had a healthcare client. They were super small. They're using our platform in a single department, and their leadership was very cautious. They wanted proof before scaling across the other departments. So I encouraged them to try additional modules just so that they could see the broader ROI, but do it methodically, right? Do sales and finance and CS orgs, etc. So we did a pilot program. We rolled out advanced analytics in just 1 clinic, and we measured document. So we tracked how staff would use the new features. We focused on decreased admin time and the error rates from their staff. And then we did a show and tell. So we presented the results to the board and said, hey, here's how we were able to reduce your time to process claims by 25%. So then they actually gave the green light for company-wide adoption, and then a renewal came with a 40% upsell, thanks to the data-driven approach. So sometimes you have to go slow in order to go fast. And in this case, it was a very new healthcare company. They wanted 1 clinic to be the guinea pig or the pilot program. And once you can able to show proof of competency and actual ROI, they're happy to do it across the board. But you have to understand that an expansion deal, whether it's a product, whether it's an additional location, or just into the actual organization itself, you must go slowly in order to showcase the ROI of your product as a whole. How do you collaborate with other departments to ensure customer success? So CS does not happen in a vacuum. At one company, each department was siloed. So sales really talked to support and product only heard from customers through a really messy pipeline. So once you tear down these silos and you make sure the entire org is marching towards certain customer goals, magic happens. So we had a weekly cross-functional meeting. So we'd share top escalations, upcoming feature requests, and customer sentiment data with the teams. We also had Slack channels, so a customer success channel for cross-functional teams, like a real chat about an urgent issue or a feature request. So everybody could be aligned and understanding, hey, yeah, my customer wanted this. And product could say, oh, yeah, that's going to be ready at the end of the month. You can understand what's happening in the org via a collaboration tool. And then we have shared KPIs. So align on metrics like churn, NPS, and usage so we can celebrate, but also troubleshoot collectively. So then customers will actually experience a seamless journey from sales handoff to onboarding to ongoing success. And internally, people felt more connected as well as informed. So really important to collaborate. Can you explain the role of data and analytics in customer success management? So imagine if you're trying to predict the weather without a forecast. Impossible, right? So data and analytics gave us the forecast for customer health. And you can leverage that data to see who's thriving, who's drifting, who's ready for expansion, who's going to churn. So first and foremost is usage metrics. So there's frequency, there's depth of feature usage, there's a pulse check of the relationship. And then we have more quantitative measures, health scores, which is typically a weighted formula of adoption, sentiment, and support data to give us numerous health status. And then we also have predictive models. So you can use historical data to anticipate churn or upsell likelihood. So if you see a big usage drop, that's probably going to be a churn risk. Intervene immediately. If you're seeing a lot of product feature requests, well, this is a really healthy account because nobody who hates your product is going to be asking for a lot of product feature requests because that means that they're pushing the product to the nth degree. And so something that I'm really happy about and proud of is you come off as a mind reader. Hey, you seem to be using feature X less lately. Are there any issues? Right? Because they say, Noah's keeping watch on my account. Yeah, you know what? We actually haven't been using that feature. We've had a bunch of new staff start. They're not really sure about it. Can you come in and do a training session? Perfect. Or, hey, I think that product feature has really decreased again with this usage. What's going on? It's like, yeah, we actually changed our business model. Nothing to worry about now. We just no longer need to use that. Cool. So you thought it was a churn risk, but in actuality, the business changed their approach as a whole, and that red health score can actually be a green as a whole. How do you ensure a smooth handoff between the sales and customer success teams? So we've all heard the horror stories of customers repeating their goals post-sales cycle. It's super annoying because they already did the entire time with the sales cycle, and they're killing, and there's, nobody likes it. And that kills trust super, super fast. So what you need to do is create a bulletproof baton or a sales to CS handoff so the momentum carries seamlessly. First and foremost, have a joint kickoff call. So sales and CS and the new customer in one meeting, confirm the goals, confirm the timelines, any special promises from the deal, make sure that is put out into the open. Handoff documentation, a document that shares everything from the customer's pain points that they did in implementation, that they did in sales, in the sales cycle itself, and any key stakeholders, personas, and personalities. And then you also have to have that immediate connection, like introduce yourself early, maybe even before the contract is fully signed, maybe when they're in implementation, just to show continuity of who you are. And when customers see a united front, they know who you are and why have to re-explain anything. They're actually going to be a lot more bought in. So implementation will improve the speed, trust remains high, and familiarity ultimately goes a long way. Can you describe your approach to developing and executing customer success plans? So I see success plans like a treasure map, and if we don't sketch out the path to mark the big X, we're going to just drift into the water and drown. So by co-creating a living, breathing success plan that aligns with the customer unique needs, that's going to be super helpful with their objectives, with their resources, and the timelines. So first, you want to have a discovery session, like what is their strategic goals? Is it increase efficiency by 25%? Is it expand into new markets? You have to find that out. Then you're going to have milestone setting. So break goals into concrete steps. Implementation of a new module by Q2, training 50 users by Q3. Understand what those milestones are just to help you along. Then you're going to have progress tracking. So using a project management tool for tasks like Monday.com or Asana or whatever have you. So nobody's in the dark. Everybody knows how we're tracking towards the goals. And then periodic reviews. It could be at QBRs. It could be on your biweekly check-ins. It might be your monthly check-ins. Like, are we on track? Are there any new goals? Are there new goals that have been dropped? Has business motives changed and business goals adjusted? Understanding that is going to be critical when having those weekly or biweekly calls. Because when the customer remains engaged because they've actually co-authored the plan, they see themselves hitting these mini goals, which is reinforcement as why they chose us as the SaaS tool or the platform provider. How do you manage customer success in a remote or a distributed team environment? So my team has multiple members, multiple continents, and actually, we felt isolated due to time zone differences. So remote setups can breed miscommunication if not handled carefully. So maintain high-touch engagement, synergy across different time zones, and consistent standards, no matter where we sit. So communication tool. So I created a Slack channel for instant messaging, Zoom for face-to-face, and obviously a shared knowledge base. And we also had coverage rotation. So we'd rotate on-call schedules to handle urgent issues across different time zones. And then for team culture, right? Virtual coffee breaks, daily stand-ups, occasional informal chats. So you have rapport across the org. And then customers in Asia, Europe, or Americas, they're all going to feel equally supported if they have the right communication tools, if they know that they have coverage, and if they have that team culture that they know, oh yeah, I just talked to Noah last week. I'm really familiar with your account. Let's dive in. Right, that familiarity, so that a customer doesn't have to start from scratch every single conversation, is huge. Can you give us an example of a time where you had to handle a dissatisfied customer remotely? So I had a European-based client. They sent a really intense email. We feel ignored. We're 6 hours ahead of you. We never sync with us properly. We're going to switch providers. Obviously, that sucked. And I was pretty new in my career in Toronto, so I had to rebuild that bridge and prove that remote doesn't mean invisible. So I was time zone sensitive. So I started scheduling my calls at 7 a.m. So it was my time early, but midday for them. I also had real-time dashboards, so we created an always-on view of open issues, progress, and used metrics, so we were not guessing at what was going on. And we also did mini updates, so weekly recap emails summarizing all the action items we did, so that they knew that we were on the ball, even if we were offline. And the ultimate outcome here was like they stopped feeling that they were brushed aside, and within a couple of months, they reported huge improvement in satisfaction. They decided to renew, and crisis was averted. Cool. So it's about 31 minutes of customer success mentor questions. Hope this gave you some insight as to what you can expect, some frameworks, some talk tracks that I've used. Hope this helps. Let me know in the comments below. Take care.